I knew something was off the moment my new boss asked if I'd gotten home safe. Not in a casual, drive carefully kind of way. I mean, he texted me 15 minutes after I left the office. "Christopher, you made it home?" I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone like it had just betrayed me. It was my second week at the company. I was still learning everyone's coffee orders, still pretending I wasn't nervous every time someone mentioned a deadline. And my boss, my brand new, intimidating, unfairly attractive boss, was texting me at 8:47 p.m. "Daniel, yeah, just got in. Everything okay?" The typing bubble appeared almost instantly. "Christopher, just making sure. It's late. See you tomorrow." That was it. No emoji. No smiley face. No explanation. And somehow that made it worse. I didn't sleep much that night. To understand why this hit me so hard, you need to understand Christopher. He wasn't much older than me. Early 30s, maybe. Tall. Always in fitted shirts that made it very obvious he worked out. Dark hair, neatly styled, the kind of jawline that makes you irrationally angry because how is that even fair? When I interviewed, he barely smiled. Just watched me with these sharp, focused eyes like he could see through every rehearsed answer I gave. "You handle pressure well, Daniel?" he asked during the interview. I lied. "Yeah, I actually work better under pressure." He nodded like he didn't fully believe me but was willing to test it. And apparently he was still testing it. The first week, he kept things professional. Strict, but fair. Corrected my reports. Made me redo a presentation slide because the font spacing was lazy. He wasn't cruel about it, just precise. But sometime during week 2, something shifted. He started calling me into his office more often. Not just for feedback. Sometimes just to clarify small things that easily could have been an email. He'd lean back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes on me. "Walk me through your thought process here," he'd say. And I would, trying not to notice how close his desk felt. Trying not to notice the way his gaze lingered just a second too long. One evening, everyone else had already left. It was almost 8 p.m., and I was still tweaking numbers on a spreadsheet because I didn't want to look incompetent in front of him. I heard his office door open. "Daniel." My stomach flipped. "Yeah. Still here." I turned in my chair. Just finishing this projection. He stepped closer, looking at my screen over my shoulder. "You don't need to stay this late every night," he said quietly. "I don't." "No." A pause. "I'd rather you not burn out." That caught me off guard. He straightened, hands in his pockets. "You're doing fine." It was such a simple sentence. "You're doing fine." But the way he said it, softer, almost personal, made my chest tighten. "Thanks," I muttered. He nodded toward the door. "I'm locking up. I'll walk you out." That wasn't necessary. The building was in a busy part of downtown. But I didn't argue. The elevator ride down was awkward. Just the two of us. Silence. The hum of machinery. My brain screaming at me to stop, noticing how broad his shoulders looked in the reflection of the mirrored walls. When we stepped outside, the air was cool, the city still buzzing. "You parked where?" he asked. "Across the street." He walked with me anyway. At my car, I fumbled with my keys like an idiot. "You always this nervous?" he asked. I laughed awkwardly. "Only when my boss is watching." He didn't laugh. Instead, he stepped a little closer. "You don't have to be nervous around me." That line. That exact line. It wasn't inappropriate. It wasn't flirty. But it felt loaded. "I just don't want to mess up," I admitted. "You won't," he said, and then his hand brushed my arm. Maybe it was accidental. Maybe it wasn't. But it lingered just long enough for my brain to short-circuit. "You should go," he added quietly. I got into my car and drove home with my heart pounding like I'd just done something illegal. That's when the text came. "You made it home?" The next day at work, he acted completely normal. Professional. Distant. Even critical of a minor formatting error. If I hadn't felt his fingers against my arm, I would have thought I imagined everything. But I didn't imagine it. And that was the problem. Because over the next few days, the pattern continued. He'd keep things strictly business during office hours. But if I stayed late, even accidentally, he'd somehow still be there too. Coincidence? I asked myself. Maybe. But then came Friday. And that's when things really crossed into something I couldn't explain. It was after a team happy hour. Nothing wild. Just drinks at a bar 2 blocks from the office. I almost didn't go. I'm not great at those things. But Christopher gave me this look when I said I might skip it. You should come, he said. It wasn't a suggestion. So I went. Everyone was relaxed, laughing. Even Christopher had loosened up, jacket off, sleeves rolled slightly. I was halfway through my second beer when I felt someone step beside me. You don't drink much, he said. I turned. I do. Just responsibly. A faint smirk touched his lips. Good. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, watching our coworkers argue about sports. You live far? He asked casually. About 20 minutes. You driving? Yeah. He nodded slowly, like he was filing that information away. When the night started winding down, people called rideshares, said their goodbyes. I was heading toward my car when I heard his voice behind me. Daniel. I turned. I'll walk you. You don't have to. I know. And there it was again. That tone. That quiet insistence. We walked in silence. The streetlights casting long shadows. My heart doing that stupid thing again where it felt too loud for my body. At my car, I turned to thank him. But he was already looking at me in a way that made my breath hitch. Not boss to employee. Not exactly. He hesitated. Then he reached out and adjusted my collar. Just slightly. I got in my car. And 10 minutes later, as I was waiting at a red light, my phone lit up again. Christopher. Text me when you're inside. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just concern. This wasn't just professionalism. My new boss was paying attention to me after hours. Too much attention. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if I wanted him to stop. I didn't text him. Not immediately. I stood in my apartment hallway, keys still in my hand, staring at the message. Text me when you're inside. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even please. Felt like a quiet command. My heart was still racing from the way he'd touched my collar. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Daniel, I'm home. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Christopher. Good. That was it again. Just one word. But I didn't sleep much that night either. Monday morning, he was back to being my boss. Sharp, focused, unreadable. If someone had watched us in the meeting room, they would have seen nothing strange. He challenged my data projections, interrupted me once to correct a phrasing choice, asked for revisions. But every time our eyes met, there was something there, something simmering just beneath the surface. After the meeting, as everyone filed out, he said casually, Daniel, stay for a minute. Of course. The door clicked shut behind the last person. He walked to the head of the table, loosening his tie slightly. You've improved, he said. I blinked. Thanks. Don't sound so surprised. I'm just used to constructive criticism. A faint smirk tugged at his mouth. You still get that. He stepped closer, not invading my space exactly, but close enough that I had to tilt my head slightly to hold eye contact. You handle pressure better than you think. There it was again. That tone. Lower than necessary. Personal. I'm trying, I said. I know. The silence stretched. My pulse thudded in my ears. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Like he was fighting it. Then, almost abruptly, he stepped back. That'll be all. And just like that, the moment shattered. Kept happening like that. Small things. The worst part? I started noticing when he wasn't around. If he left early, I felt disappointed. If he didn't call me into his office for a full day, I caught myself wondering why. It was messed up. He was my boss. There were lines. Clear lines. Till Tuesday night. I stayed late again, not intentionally. I just got lost in a project. The office was nearly empty. Lights dimmed in the hallways. I didn't even hear him approach this time. You're still here. I jumped. Jesus, sorry. I didn't hear you. You don't scare easily, do you? Apparently I do. He looked tired. Or maybe just less guarded. You don't need to prove anything by staying this late, he said quietly. I'm not trying to prove anything. His eyes searched mine like he was looking for something deeper. Then why do you always look at me like you are? That caught me completely off guard. I don't look at you any type of way. He studied me for a long second. You do. My throat went dry. And how do I look at you? I asked, my voice barely steady. He didn't answer right away. Like you're waiting for me to do something, he said. The air between us felt electric. I'm not, I whispered. You shouldn't, he said softly. And that sentence felt like a warning. Or a confession. I swallowed hard. Then stop giving me reasons to. The second the words left my mouth, I wanted to take them back. Silence. Heavy. Charged. His jaw tightened slightly. That's not appropriate, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. You're the one who walks me to my car. I shot back quietly. You're the one who texts me to make sure I'm home. He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked almost frustrated. Do you think I don't know that? He asked. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. Then why? I asked. He ran a hand through his hair, the first crack in his usual composure I'd seen. Because I don't trust myself, he admitted. That hit me like a punch to the chest. What does that mean? He exhaled slowly. It means I hired you because you're good at your job. A pause. And then I realized I might have made it harder for myself than I expected. The tension shifted. This wasn't just playful power dynamics anymore. This was real. Harder how? I asked even though I already knew. His eyes locked onto mine. You're not oblivious, Daniel. My pulse spiked. So say it. This can't happen, he murmured. Then why is it? I asked, my voice barely more than air. His jaw tightened. You work for me. I know. I'm responsible for you. That's not what this is. You don't get to decide that, he said quietly. Something about that hit my pride. So you're the only one who gets to feel something? I shot back. His eyes darkened. You think this is one-sided? The way he said it made my stomach flip. Before I could respond, he stepped back abruptly, like he'd physically forced himself to. He dragged a hand down his face, exhaling sharply. Silence filled the space between us again. Heavy. Real. You should go home, he said finally. That's it. What do you want me to say, Daniel? His voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was strained. I want you to stop pretending this isn't happening. He held my gaze. It shouldn't be. That's not what I asked. Another beat of silence. Then he did something that surprised me. He walked to his office door and locked it. The click echoed too loudly in the quiet room. My heart jumped into my throat. He turned back to me slowly. If I say this out loud, he said, voice low and steady now, there's no going back. The air felt thin. Then say it. He took a step toward me. I notice you, he said. That simple. That honest. I notice when you're stressed. I notice when you pretend you're not. I notice the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. My chest tightened. And you think I don't notice you? I whispered. His expression shifted, something softer breaking through. I've tried to keep this professional, he said. I've tried to convince myself it's just admiration or concern. And it's not. My pulse thundered. You're my boss, I said, even though my body wasn't moving away. I know. And that complicates everything. I know. Then why does it feel like you're not going to stop? He searched my face for a long moment. Because I don't think you want me to. That was the truth neither of us had wanted to admit. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped forward. The move was small, barely noticeable. His breath hitched. Daniel, he warned softly. Tell me to leave, I said. You have no idea how hard this has been, he murmured. You think it's been easy for me? I shot back, my voice rougher than I expected. That got his attention. Oh, you look at me like that in the elevator. I swallowed. You text me at night. His eyes flicked between mine, searching. And you never once told me to stop, because I didn't want him to. The realization hung between us. You're right, he said quietly. If this goes wrong, he said, voice barely above a whisper, it could cost both of us. I know. And I won't ever put you in a position where you feel pressured. You're not, I said immediately. That seemed to matter to him. A lot. You should walk away, he murmured. But he wasn't moving, all of it sitting right there between us. I didn't think. I just leaned in. You're not thinking clearly, he muttered. I am. You just let your boss kiss you in a conference room. And you just kissed your employee. That earned a breath of something that almost sounded like a laugh. You're not making this easier. I'm not trying to. You need to go home, he said. And so do I. That's not an answer. It's the only smart one. But the way he was looking at me, it wasn't finished. Not even close. I barely remember the drive home. I threw my keys on the counter and ran a hand through my hair. This was insane. He was my boss. This could blow up both our careers. And yet, my phone buzzed. I froze. Christopher, did you get home? Of course. I stared at it longer than I should have. Daniel, yes. 3 dots. Gone. Back. Gone again. Then, Christopher, we need to talk about what happened. My chest tightened. Daniel, in a good way or a bad way? A pause. Longer this time. Christopher, in a responsible way. I laughed under my breath. Daniel, that doesn't answer my question. This time he didn't text back immediately. Instead, my phone lit up with his name calling me. I hesitated, then answered. Hi, I said, trying to sound steadier than I felt. There was a breath on the other end. Not rushed, just heavy. Are you alone? He asked. Yes. Good. A beat of silence. Then, I shouldn't have done that. My stomach dropped slightly. But you wanted to, I said quietly. Another pause. Yes. The honesty hit harder over the phone. And I didn't misread this? I asked. No. He exhaled slowly. You didn't. Something in my chest unclenched. But wanting something, he continued, voice firming slightly, doesn't mean it's the right move. So what are you saying? I'm saying I don't ever want you to feel like your job depends on how you respond to me. It doesn't. You can't know that. I do, I insisted. You've never treated me differently. He was quiet for a long second. That's because I've been trying very hard not to. The image of him in the office, composed, controlled, flashed in my mind. And tonight? I asked. Tonight, he said slowly. I stopped trying. My pulse jumped again. And do you regret it? I asked before I could stop myself. Silence. Then, no. The word was low, certain. But I need to handle this the right way. And what does that look like? Another pause. I step back professionally, he said. I transfer your reporting line to Mark. Effective immediately. That stunned me. What? It removes the power imbalance. You'd do that? Yes. The firmness in his tone told me he'd already made the decision. And personally? I asked, heart pounding. He didn't answer right away. Personally, he said carefully, I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. My breath caught. But we take it slow, he continued. Outside the office, it wasn't impulsive. It wasn't reckless. It was measured, responsible. You've thought about this, I said softly. I've been thinking about it for weeks. That confession did something to me. You noticed me, I murmured. I did. Silence stretched between us again. But this time it wasn't tense. You have no idea how hard it's been to hear you call me sir in meetings, he muttered under his breath. I laughed softly. You like that? More than I should. What happens now? I asked. A small pause. Now, he said, voice low but steady. I take you to dinner tomorrow. Off the clock. No titles. Okay, I said. Okay, he echoed. There was one last pause. Like neither of us wanted to hang up first. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Christopher. The way he exhaled when I said his name again? Yeah. This wasn't over. Not even close. I barely slept. Not because I regretted anything, but because I couldn't stop replaying it. By the time I got to the office the next morning, I felt like I was carrying a secret under my skin. Christopher was already there, back in his suit, composed, focused. If I didn't know better, I'd think nothing had happened. He glanced up when I walked in. Just a second. Just long enough. "Morning," he said evenly. "Morning." Professional. Controlled. And yet my stomach flipped anyway. At 10 a.m., I got an email from HR. Subject: Reporting Structure Update. Effective immediately, I'd be reporting to Mark. No explanation. Just done. My chest tightened. He'd actually followed through. Around noon, Mark stopped by my desk. "Guess I'm your new boss," he joked. "Looks like it." Christopher said, "You're solid." Don't make me look bad. Solid. That word shouldn't have hit me the way it did. But it did. The rest of the day passed painfully slowly. We didn't interact much. He kept things clean, clear, distant. But every time I caught him looking at me from across the room, it felt different now. Not restrained. Just waiting. At 6:02 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Christopher. 7:30. I'll send the address." I stared at it, heart kicking up again. "Daniel. Should I dress like I'm meeting my former boss?" A pause. Then, "Christopher." No. Another pause. "Christopher. Dress like you're meeting someone who's been thinking about kissing you all day." I had to sit back in my chair after that one. The restaurant he chose was low-lit. Intimate but not flashy. When I walked in, he was already there. No tie. Top button undone. Dark jacket. He stood when he saw me. For a split second, the intensity in his eyes made my pulse spike all over again. "You look." He started, then stopped himself. "What?" I asked. He gave a small, almost private smile. "Good. You clean up well yourself." "Careful," he said quietly. "You're not at the office anymore." The shift was immediate. No titles. Dinner was surprisingly normal. We talked about everything except the obvious. Where we grew up. The worst jobs we ever had. Music. Travel. It was easy. Too easy. And that scared me more than the kiss. When the check came, he paid without argument. Outside, the air was cool again. Familiar. "So," I said quietly. "So," he echoed. There it was again. That tension. But different now. "I meant what I said last night," he said. "About going slow. I know. I don't rush things I care about." The words settled heavily in my chest. "You care already?" I asked. His gaze locked onto mine. "I've been trying not to." That hit harder than anything else. We stood there on the sidewalk, city noise humming around us. He stepped closer. Not abrupt. Not overwhelming. Just deliberate. "I'm not taking you home tonight," he said quietly. That surprised me. "You're not?" "No." His eyes held mine. "Because if I do, I won't take it slow." The honesty in that sentence made my stomach drop in the best way. "Good to know. I want this to last," he added. That shifted everything. It was about intention. "Then we do it your way," I said softly. He studied me carefully. "You're sure?" "Yes. I'll walk you to your car." Of course he would. Some things apparently don't change. As we walked, our hands brushed again. This time, I let my fingers lightly lace with his. He glanced down at our hands, then back at me. "Text me when you're inside," he said quietly. I smiled. "You don't trust me to get home?" "I trust you," he replied. A pause. "I just like knowing you're safe." And for the first time, it didn't feel like control. Then got into my car before I could change my mind. As I drove away, my phone buzzed almost immediately. "Christopher, drive carefully." And this time, I smiled the whole way home. The next 2 weeks were careful. That's the only word for it. Careful texts, careful distance at work. Mark officially became my supervisor, and professionally, everything shifted smoothly. Christopher kept things neutral in meetings. If anything, he was stricter with me than before, almost like overcorrecting. But outside the office, it was a different story. We saw each other 3 times that week. Dinner once, a late walk through the city another night, and one evening where he came over to my apartment, just for a glass of wine. That last one was the real test. He stood in my living room, jacket off, sleeves pushed up slightly, looking around like he was cataloging details. "So this is where you disappear to every night," he said. "You make it sound dramatic." He gave me that look, the one that always felt like it was peeling back layers. "You are dramatic," he replied quietly. I handed him a glass. "You don't know me well enough to say that." He stepped closer. "I'm learning." There was something different about being in my space. At the office, he was contained. Here, he was more relaxed. Still controlled, that part seemed built into him, but looser around the edges, talking about nothing important, until the silence stretched too long. "You said you wanted to take this slow," I reminded him softly. "I do." He leaned back slightly, studying me. "I haven't dated a man I worked with before," he admitted. "You've dated men before?" Faint smirk. "Is that the part that shocks you?" "No," I said honestly. "The shock was you kissing me in a conference room." That got a real laugh out of him. He looked younger when he laughed, less intimidating. "I don't lose control easily," he said quietly. "You didn't seem out of control." "I'm trying very hard," he said. "To do what?" "Not to rush you." The fact that he thought that was necessary made something warm spread through my chest. "You're not rushing me." His eyes searched mine for hesitation. "You're sure?" "Yes." That seemed to unlock something. I swallowed. "I don't want you to leave," I admitted. His jaw tightened slightly. "That's not the same as being ready." I hated that he was right, but I respected him for it. "You matter too much for me to mess this up." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Good." He stepped back reluctantly. "I'll call you tomorrow." "Text me when you get home," I teased. That familiar look returned. "Careful," he said quietly, but he smiled. The complication came 3 days later. Because of course it did. HR called me into a meeting, and Christopher was already sitting there. That's when I knew. Someone had noticed. And suddenly, this careful, intentional thing we were building was about to get tested. The moment I walked into the conference room and saw Christopher sitting beside the HR director, my stomach dropped. He wasn't looking at me. He was composed. Hands folded neatly on the table. Expression unreadable. Too unreadable. "Daniel." HR smiled politely. "Have a seat." I did. The door clicked shut behind me, and suddenly the air felt thinner. "We'll keep this brief," she said. "This is just a routine check-in." "Routine, right?" She glanced between us. "We've had a recent reporting structure adjustment, and since it happened rather quickly, we just want to confirm everything is appropriate." There it was. Appropriate. Christopher spoke before I could. "The change was my decision," he said evenly. "I felt it was better for Daniel's development to report directly to Mark. Professional. Calm. No cracks." HR nodded slowly. "And there are no conflicts of interest? No external factors influencing that decision?" My heart was pounding. This was the moment. The lie or the truth? Christopher didn't hesitate. "No." The firmness in his voice surprised me. It wasn't defensive. It was protective. HR studied him for a long second, then turned to me. "Daniel." I swallowed. "No conflicts," I said carefully. That was technically true. We hadn't done anything inappropriate at work. We hadn't hidden some secret relationship that affected my job. We'd been careful. Painfully careful. HR nodded, satisfied enough. "Good. We just like to ensure transparency at leadership levels. You both are doing excellent work." And just like that, it was over. The meeting ended. Christopher stood first, holding the door open for me. Professional. Distant. We walked back into the hallway without saying a word. But when we reached the corner, out of sight from the main floor, he stopped. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Were you?" His jaw tightened slightly. "I don't take risks with people I care about." There it was again. Care. Not impulse. Not recklessness. Care. "You didn't hesitate," I said. "No." "Why?" He looked at me, really looked at me, and lowered his voice. Because until we decide what this is, it stays outside that building. That grounded me. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't backing off. He was protecting the boundary. Are you having second thoughts? I asked. His eyes softened slightly. About you. A small shake of his head. No. The relief that washed through me was immediate. Then what are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking, he said slowly, that I don't want what we're building to feel like something we have to defend. That hit harder than the HR scare. You deserve something steady, he said quietly. And you don't. The faint, almost tired smile. I haven't always done steady. That was new. You want to? I asked. Yes. No hesitation. Just yes. And suddenly this wasn't about tension anymore. It wasn't about stolen glances or late-night texts. It was about choice. We're not in trouble, I said. No. And we didn't do anything wrong. No. Then what are we afraid of? He studied me carefully. I'm not afraid of consequences, he admitted. I'm afraid of losing control again. That made me smile slightly. You're very dramatic, I teased. That earned me a look. Don't test me. I stepped closer this time. Deliberate. I don't want you to be controlled with me, I said quietly. His expression shifted. Less guarded. But I also don't want you to feel like you have to hold back because of work. It was commitment. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel nervous. I felt steady. That night he came over again. Not with urgency. Not with pent-up tension. Just intention. We ordered takeout. Sat closer this time. The energy between us wasn't frantic anymore. It was warmer, quieter, more certain. Halfway through the movie we weren't really watching, he reached for my hand. No hesitation. Just held it. You still sure? He asked softly. Yes, more human. You're quiet, he said softly. Just thinking. That's never neutral with you. I smiled faintly. You're one to talk. He brushed his thumb lightly across my knuckles. Not distracting, just present. What are you thinking about? He asked. That 2 weeks ago I was terrified of you. He huffed a quiet laugh. Good. Why is that good? Because it means I've made progress. I shifted slightly, turning toward him more fully. You've changed a lot in 2 weeks. So have you. How? You don't look at me like you're waiting for permission anymore. That caught me off guard. Was I? Yes. And now? Now you look like you chose this. He wasn't wrong. At some point between the conference room kiss and the HR meeting, something shifted. I stopped reacting to him and started choosing him. I don't want this to be something we sneak around with, he said quietly when he pulled back. It isn't. Good. A pause. This didn't start because you're my boss, I said honestly. It started because you noticed me. He studied me carefully. And that matters? Yes. Something softened in his expression. Daniel, he said quietly, I don't pursue things halfway. I've noticed. When I decide I want something, I don't treat it casually. The weight of that settled in my chest. And you've decided? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Yes. That wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was grounded. Certain. The kind of certainty that doesn't come from impulse, it comes from intention. You're not my boss anymore, I said softly. No. So what are you? Someone who wants to take you out again this weekend, he said quietly. And the weekend after that. A slow smile spread across my face. That's very specific. I like plans. You scared me in that meeting, I admitted. I know. But you didn't pull away. No, because walking away would have been easier. That answer meant more than anything else he'd said. Anyone can want something when it's simple. It takes something different to stay when it's complicated. We didn't say anything for a while after that. Later, when he stood to leave, he didn't hesitate at the door. No dramatic pause. No second guessing. You don't have to text me when you get home, I teased lightly. He smiled, that small, controlled smile that wasn't so controlled anymore. I know. A beat. But I will. The next morning at work, nothing had changed. And everything had. We didn't linger in hallways. We didn't need to, because whatever this was, it wasn't built on secrecy anymore. It was built on choice. And that made all the difference. When I caught his eye across the conference table that afternoon, he didn't look away quickly like before. He held my gaze, just for a second, long enough. And this time I didn't feel nervous. I felt steady, because my new boss hadn't just been too attentive after work. He'd been too careful, too intentional, too unwilling to treat me like a risk instead of a person. And somewhere between tension and trust, we chose each other.